skew if you don't have a parting tool. Using the parting tool, anchor, rub the bevel, you lower the tool, and raise the handle to an inch each step. My first cut is just to flatten the side. Next cut will create my tenon. When I create my tenon, I don't want to make it concave at all. You'd rather make it slightly convex so your chuck can rip that spigot and it contacts all outer edges on the contact, which makes sure that when you're turning the inside and this is in the chuck, that side's square to the other side. So that's crucial. If you have a concave surface, you're going to have hills and valleys that put that chuck slightly off kilter. And then when you come to put your wood on the box, it won't line up. When you create a tenon, you only want that tenon to be about 3/8 of an inch. If it's any bigger than 3/8 of an inch, that is going to bottom out in the bottom of the chuck. And if you have wood bottomed out in the bottom of the chuck and you get a catch, that gives it leverage to come flying out of the chuck. So never bottom out the wood in your chuck, always 3/8 or less. You can get away with an 1/8 or a 1/16, depending what you're doing. I usually go for about 3/8 or less, 3/8 to an 1/8. Once I have done that, I'm going to check the piece of wood for any sort of flaws, cracks, defects.
Okay, did you say 3/8 or 3/16? 3/8. The depth of the tenon?
Yes, 3/8 roughly is about the depth of my tenon. Well, that is about, yeah, about 3/8, just over an 1/8.
3/16.
3/16.
Yeah, 3/16. Sorry. Also, when you do a box, you usually have the end grain on either side. Boxes usually are end grain facing up because when you do a lid and a base, they always line up nicely and they move in the same way. You can get the grain lines lining up, which give it a good color, a good effect. If you do it where you alternate those, like this, I had a whole bunch of pieces of wood that were too small to use for certain things I thought about, so I laminated them all together with the end grain alternating. So the ash wood grain goes this way and the cherry wood grain goes this way. If you're going to do this, you want to make sure that your wood is dry. You want to make sure that you have the growth rings going the same way on all your pieces of wood so you get the same movement in the wood. And even still with the end grain here and here, the wood's going to move in this fashion. So over time, you might have a bigger gap on the side grain than the end grain because it elongates. But to avoid that, you totally make sure the wood is dry, even microwave it for a little bit to make sure, and totally saturate it with a finish to plasticize it to make sure that it's not going to move. So I hope that doesn't move and blow up on me. It might, but hope not. For the most part, I do the boxes with the end grain, connecting end grain. Once I've checked my wood, I have a small crack right here. It's not very deep at all. I can take that away with the lid. So I'm going to make this side the lid. I always map out with a pen exactly where I like the lid. If I'm doing a cylindrical box, I find that 1/3 to 2/3 looks nice. If you have a lid that's 2/3 to a 1/3 base, it looks really chunky and off. There are those golden rules that some people live by and go by. I don't really go by that. I don't measure the 1/3, 2/3, or whatever. I usually go what looks good to me. And that's what I found looks good for me in a box, is about a 1/3 for the lid or a 2/3 for the base. You don't want your lid to be too heavy. If it falls off, it's going to break the base or ding or dent the base. Once I have found my center or the connection of the base and the lid, I will then part through that section, not with a roughing gouge, but as a parting tool. I have a couple different parting tools. If you use a regular parting tool that's an 1/8, you go in, you create your connection, your male connection of your box.
Hey, bring it down to the, so you see on that camera, there you go.
Yeah, so here we have 2 halves of our boxes. This is how I will part through. You want to create your male connection, which is going to be on your lid. Go into the depth, don't touch it again. That will be your reference for your inside of your box. And when you're doing end grain boxes, for the most part, it looks, if you take too much off in the center, your grain is never going to line up. It's going to be off by a lot. If you take 2/8 off or a 1/4 inch, it's actually quite substantial. Your grain is never going to line up. So I find my initial will be an entry with a parting tool, and then I have a couple parting tools that I have made myself, which give me a thin curve. I would then part through to relieve the cut down to where I created that connection for my lid. Again, I am slightly going in concave rather than convex because I want all surfaces to hit on the outer surface. I don't want to fill in the very middle of my box. So that is about 1/8 of an inch deep. You can go as deep as you like, but you have to leave enough meat to take out wood on the inside to create your connection. Once I have done that, I have a couple thin curve parting tools that I made myself. This is a old chef knife, butcher knife. I bought this for 25 cents at a garage sale. I sharpened it, I dulled the blade of course so I don't cut myself. And then I ground it into a thin curve parting tool. It's about a 1/16. It's very helpful when doing boxes and you want to get that grain to line up. This one is an old industrial bandsaw that I made into a thin curve parting tool. This is about a 32nd. It takes off. It's a little flimsier, so you have to be careful when you're really in there. The handle is actually made out of old stalls. Yeah, like washroom stalls. It's very good in grip. Good for good grip. But for the most part, this is my go-to. I start off with the cut. I have the very aggressive point upwards, and I would start to initiate my cut. As I go in deeper and deeper and deeper, it gets really quite aggressive, so I then flip it over to the shallower cut, and it's not as grabby when I'm really right in there. You want to eyeball it. You want to keep an eye in between there to see how thin that is getting. You don't want to go so thin that it breaks and comes flying off. This just happened to get caught in there, and broke off anyway.
It's kind of warm.
I didn't cut myself, so we're good.
Fresh meat.
Pardon?
Fresh meat.
That's fresh meat.
Fresh.
Oh, yeah, fresh meat. Alright, now I have my two halves. This is the lid of my box. This is the base of my box. I already have my male connection. All I have to do now is create my female connection for that to fit up nicely to one another. Sometimes I do the lid first, sometimes I do the base first. There's more than 10 ways to skin a cat, you can do it either way. You just want to get a good fit, a good connection. I just got to grab a knockout bar.
John, smile. John, tell us a joke. Tell us a joke.
On the TV, you know, shoot your chin. Yeah.
Whenever you're using this, don't take your hand off it. Knock it out, take it out when you take the screw drive out. If you leave this in, when you start the lathe, this will move its way out and you have a projectile going wherever. So another just touch on safety. I guess I need, oh okay, sweet, I brought a check key. So this, first off, I'm going to start with the lid. I'm going to take a little bit of the weight out of the bottom. You don't want a lid that's too heavy. Because then if you lift up the box, the first thing that falls and shatters or breaks or gets dented is the lid of your box. There's many ways to do this since it's end grain. A lot of the time I use scrapers, round nose scrapers, square scrapers, but you can use a bowl gouge, you can use a spindle gouge, as long as you're using it safely. I just find it quicker, easier to use a scraper, especially in end grain, where it's really grippy and grabby. When you use a scraper, you always want your tool rest higher than center. Actually, first I'm going to go across, make sure this is flat with the parting tool. Just a nice thin cut, and then make that slightly concave. After doing so, now I will hollow out the inside. My tool rest is slightly higher than center. Your scraper rides below center. And since it's end grain, you always want to cut downhill when you're turning. So to cut downhill on end grain, you would cut from the center outward. You can still cut from the outer diameter to the center. It's just a lot more grabby. The fibers of the end grain really want to grip the tool, which gives it potential to come flying off the lathe. Once you do that, take a bit of weight out of there. Some people I know do like a little embellishment, or they'll inlay a jewel or something on the inside of the box. So every time you open the box, there's a surprise on the inside. I've done a few where I've inlaid little jewels or dollar store jewels, or a color contrasting wood, or a penny. You can let your imagination